Oh, hi everyone. Yeah, lovely to be here as well. I don't know if some of you were here a couple of weeks ago when I did a shorter presentation to the other startup to stand-up group. So some of you might hear little bits of this before, but it's all very, very relevant. Yeah, if you'd like to put in the chat, what made you turn up to this session? What is it that you, from a sales and revenue and go-to-market perspective, are either really struggling on, you want to learn about, or made you think this looks interesting? I'd love to be part of this. Just anything that comes to mind. But if you could put it in the chat, because then I'll try to cover that as I actually do the presentation. Growing top of funnel. Okay, Chris says. Okay. So that means that more leads at the top. Okay. Lovely. We are not salespeople. We have tech delivery, domain knowledge, but sales is a gap. Yeah, Stuart, that's very, very common for a lot of people that we work with. A lot of founders, in fact. Anything else? Tips for tweaking our GTM strategies to lower CAC and increase win rate. Okay, lovely. Fantastic. Any other thing that anyone really thinks actually that is something that I really want to join for or I'd like to learn? Increase conversions. Okay, fantastic. Well, obviously, as we've got sort of 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes um there, and so hang on, I'm a doctoral researcher looking at leads for my study and understanding the market. Okay, all right. That's really not interesting to hear, Jyoti. So what I'll do is obviously within this time, I'm going to be giving you in this presentation overview of some interesting facts around this and why this is so important to get right, and a couple of things to consider. Obviously, there'll be some time at the end to ask questions. I'll leave some time at the end to ask questions, and of course, you can always follow up with me afterwards. So, if I share my screen, can everybody see that? Just somebody push a thumbs up, or yeah, okay, fantastic. So from current slide. Okay, lovely. So just very quickly about me. I've been in sales and business development for 20 years. I worked in the corporate world, had a very successful career there in a variety of sales and business development roles. I then moved into leadership roles within that. And then 4.5 years ago, I decided to go out on my own and start my own company. Um, and what I've been doing is I've been helping businesses, SMEs in particular, to develop their sales and their revenue from a few different angles. So one is the actual systems and first is the strategy, because a lot of companies don't have the right strategy. Then it's building the systems and processes and playbooks to also merge with that strategy, because you can have the right strategy, but you haven't got the supporting infrastructure, it's not going to work. And then the final aspect is training and coaching leaders and teams. So that's founders themselves, but also companies with sales teams as well. I'm going to give you some stats, which probably alarm you in a little while, that's why that's needs doing. Outside that as well, I'm also an accredited executive coach. I have a big passion in understanding psychology and people. So I'm an international best-selling author as well. My book, Selling from the Inside Out, addresses both the psychology and the sort of tactical side of sales as well. I love speaking as well, so this sort of thing, I love doing. I love educating. I love speaking, and I've spoken around the world on different stages, really around the areas of go-to-market, sales, human performance, even from a sales team perspective, and then how to actually build those revenue engines. So, just some interesting information here, right? So, we look at sales and go-to-market. You look at some of the stats here, and you can see that somebody said they want to increase the top of funnel because a lot of 54% of companies didn't create enough pipeline, right? It's not creating enough top of funnel. 54% are seeing longer sales cycles. There's a decrease in win rates and there's a decrease in deal values. So basically, there's less leads, less opportunities, less of those opportunities are converting, and then people are spending less and it's taking longer to bring the revenue in, right? That's obviously going to be a problem. And obviously, with what's going on in the world at the moment, it's not helping. This is the really interesting one, though. 69% of sales reps, so these people are hired to do roles within companies, they miss their quota. And I speak to a lot of founders, a lot of CEOs, a lot of SMEs, and one of the things they say is we can't find the salespeople. And there's reasons for that. Number one, it's always harder to attract the top talent because you have to pay top money for that. But secondly, a lot of the time they haven't really set their salespeople up for success. They haven't got internally what's needed to set them up. Now, that's also including if, very small businesses who the founders do most of the sales. They haven't set themselves up for success. Somebody said earlier that they're not salespeople, they're techies. That's a lot of founders. Brilliant at what they do, brilliant at creating a product or service, not the best at selling. And that's why 49% of companies miss revenue. And I think there's a stat which says that one in every 3 years a business goes out of business. It kind of falls in line with that. And this is where we look at go to market. And I want to explain a bit more about what go to market actually means in a minute. But these are 15 reasons that we found through a lot of research and working with lots of different clients that we say it's broken, right? And you can see along here, some of these might resonate or resonate with businesses that you know, or even that you sell into, or your own ones. And there's a few I'd really like to really sort of narrow down on here. But one is you can't predict or forecast revenue for the next 2 quarters. So what we find with a lot of businesses is there's no real system. And when you can't predict the future because you haven't got a proper pipeline in place, a proper sales system to analyze where those deals are in place, then you can't really have a predictable business. It's one great quarter, one great month, then another one that's not. And you cannot grow a business like that. You cannot scale a business like that. And if you're looking for funding, that's certainly going to work against you. The other one is businesses relying on heroic sales plays and not plays. What that means, typically a founder-led business, is typically that business has grown because the founder. They've hustled hard because they're so passionate, it's their baby. They've got a great network. How many of you got a great network that refer you a lot of business, right? Or they have just some maybe one or two people in the founding team or one or two people in the sales team who are heroes. But again, you cannot grow and scale a business if you're relying on that because you haven't actually got what we call a sales play. There's not actually a proper system and strategy in place. And then the training to back that up or the enablement to back that up to make it more like a machine that's predictable and not reliant just on the founder or on a strong network or word of mouth to bring in business. And then the third point is that I really like to look at is that churn is killing your business. And what does churn mean? Churn means that customers you've got are not renewing. Okay, so people are losing them. That's a big source of revenue. The other churn is deals are falling through the pipeline. So you could be getting a lot of leads in, but if they're not converting, ultimately, what's the point? And I see a lot of businesses spend a lot on lead generation strategies, and then it doesn't convert, and they're actually wasting their money. And churn can also be if you do have a sales team, is you keep losing your sales team because either the best ones go or you just haven't really got an infrastructure to support them. You're not getting the best sales guys in, they're not trained, and then you're losing salespeople and either give up on building a sales team or just keep going. It seems like rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So all of these are very, very key, and you might resonate on them. But those three in particular, we find with SMEs who really is particularly trying to grow and scale. Just a few other stats on the sales here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is interesting. 79% of businesses have no formulated, documented, written sales plan or strategy. That's why a lot of the time you struggle. You have to. One piece of advice is, have you, just like when, people used to have a business plan, have you actually got a documented, written sales plan and strategy that your business is relying on? This is another interesting one. So ICP, ideal customer profile. When the research is done, only 7% of revenue, 7%, that's gone down from 33% in recent years, is coming from what we call our ideal customer profile, which means a couple of things. It means that businesses, and I really like you to urge yourselves to think about this, haven't really worked out what the ideal customer is and just going for everyone. And when you go for everyone, you don't serve anyone. Or because they're getting desperate, because business is not converting, what they're doing, they're going, well, let's just take on anything we can. And then they get in that same cycle of churn, burnout, rinse and repeat. Okay. Other little things, qualified deals convert 3 times higher. Are you and are your sales team, have you got a proper qualification process? Because when you do, deals come in 3 times higher. And the other thing is that deals go over 90 days only convert at 20%. Now, a lot of the reason for deals are taking longer to convert is, yes, the state of the market, but often what we find is you haven't got a proper strategy in place, a proper system in place. Because when companies that have a proper sales system that they actually follow and a methodology, again, deals come in within that 90-day period, which increases conversion. Because once they go over 90 days, on average, it does depend on the average order value, they're only converting at 20%. And of course, either the founders or the sales teams aren't trained well enough, because the ones that are 60% more likely to reach quota. So then what is a sales go-to-market strategy? That's a detailed plan that a business uses to launch, maintain, or grow a product or service and achieve success in the market. And these are some of the things that it involves. But it's not only for new product launches. You could have a very mature company that's still needs to create a go-to-market strategy for maybe a new area of their business. It's not sales only. Sales is a big part of it, but it's also marketing and it's customer success. And what we mean by customer success is the people who serve the clients that you have, right? Because one of the very interesting stats are that if you get 120%, a business with 120% net revenue return does not need to bring in a single new business client, and within 4 years will double their business. So just have a think about that, right? If you achieve 120% NRR score from your existing clients, you will double your business within 4 years without a single new client. And that's why what we really believe in, what we help our clients is get new business in. You need new clients, but you should be getting more by upselling and cross-selling and renewing your existing clients, because that's the easy fruit. That's the low-hanging fruit. And that's what a really strong sales and go-to-market strategy does. It makes sure all those teams are aligned, all those roles are aligned, the strategy's right, the process to back up that strategy right, and furthermore, it could involve training and coaching as well. So these are really the 8 areas for to consider in your go-to-market. See, a lot of people will just say sales, and they put it under one bracket. But there's so many things here. So we break it down into these 8 areas, which we help customers with. First is the total relevant market. So a lot of the time people look at total addressable market. Maybe some of you think like, what's our total addressable market? Now, what we're finding is that's not what works. It's too wide. And actually, you're better off starting off narrow, and once you build success, going wider. And really, it's better to look at your total relevant market. So where can you grow the most? And one of the things you do there is get very, very clear on your ideal customer profile. And we've helped clients do this, but just a few things that you should be looking at when building your ideal customer profile is one is what we call is the firmographics. What does that mean? Is do you know what that customer or that company looks like that you're selling to ideally? What's their revenue, right? How many people in the company? Where they may be geographically based, right? And what's anything very, very detailed about their firm? Technographics. Nowadays, because technology is playing a bigger stack and AI is playing a bigger stack, do you know, ideally, even from a technology point of view, again, this one depends more on what you're selling to them, where they're at. What would that ideal customer look like from a tech or AI point of view? Their behavioral characteristics. Have you got it really, really well documented? What does that company or customer typically behave like? Right, write that down, because it will help you then to identify them and even create your right positioning to attract them. What's their readiness indicators? I was spoken to a CEO couple of weeks ago, and we went through this question, and he was like, "What do you mean the readiness indicators? How ready are they to buy from you? Have you actually worked out what are the factors that are considering why a customer or company is going to buy from you?" That should be again documented down. And then what are the primary problems that they need solving? That's so important. I think you probably heard of this before. People actually don't care so much about your product or service. Of course, they want a quality product or service, but what they care more about is how can you solve their problem? Have you really understood your customer's world, your ideal customer world, and really understood their problem and documented that? What's the best fit signals? Again, this really stops you going after everyone. What really are the signals that will define that customer is the best fit for you guys? And also, equally important is what is not a fit. So in my business, we've got this. In the customer we help, is like, who do you actually don't want to take on? Who is, it's a nice to have. If you've got capacity, you might take them on, but this is not who you're going to target. So when you understand things like that, your ideal customer profile, it helps you with that planning and areas like total relevant market. Market investment mapping, right? Have you segmented the market? Have you segmented your products, sorry, that create the highest customer value? Do you know, we did a piece of work with a company recently to really work out which of their products are actually creating most of their value and bringing most of their sales in. Brand and demand, really important. How will you engage your customers with differentiated POV? This is somebody said, getting more leads in the top of funnel. This does help when you go for your ideal ICP, but what is your positioning statement? Have you really understood your USP? And this is not where a lot of people think about when they want to get more leads in. This is another piece of advice. What do most companies think? Let's get our lead generation system fixed. Of course, that's going to help. Of course, it's going to help if you invest in that. But it's the overall sales messaging you're providing. It's the overall brand that you're creating. It's how the customer journey you're taking them through that will also help to bring in those leads. It's not just the, the top of funnel on its own. And then pipeline velocity, what does that mean, right? So that is, have you actually really worked out the type of sales team you need? And this all is relevant when you look at the whole map there, because maybe on your product or service or your goals, you need farmers. If your strategy is that you want to grow mainly your business through your existing accounts, you want people who are very, very good farmers. But it could be that you want to just expand into new markets, aggressively take on, you need hunters. So have you really understood that? Are you hiring the right roles? Is there sales playbook? So one of the things we do with pipeline velocity is create a playbook. What's a playbook? It means that anybody can come into that business and can follow a set of instructions to a certain degree, obviously use their own personality and skills and bring in sales. Again, goes back to 79% of businesses don't even have something like that. And what you're effectively saying is bringing in new salespeople and go, here you go, just go off and do what you can. Now, of course, they have to do that, but at the same time, if you put down a playbook that they can follow, it makes a big difference. Have you created the right compensation plans? Because again, if hunters want a lot of compensation to be upfront, farmers might want a different compensation plan. So all of these things are why some of the reasons why sales teams aren't working. And then there's all the other areas as well. I won't go through all of them, but customer expansion, right? Customer expansion is it's linked to your pipeline velocity, but it's also linked to other areas as well. Have you got something? How can you upserve your customers to get more out of them? Again, this is very detailed strategy and planning. Rev operations, what metrics are driving your business health? And then finally, leadership and management. Are you and your teams, are you aligned? Customer success, marketing, sales, all aligned in this overall plan. And I think the point we're making here is this is what GTM is more than just sales on its own. It's a system of revenue building. And the reason this can work for a small business certainly starts helping when they get into a few million plus. But if you start with this in mind, you can grow your business sustainably. And certainly as you grow it, the reason why a lot of companies don't scale is because they haven't got these different areas sorted out. So types of questions that you should be discussing, as a leader is looking at what's your mission and overall goal, because that's going to affect the way you go about selling. Really getting clarity on who's your ICP. I can't stress your ideal customer profile. Get that right. And then be ruthless in just marketing and selling to them. Do not fall in the trap of, oh, let's try to go for everyone. You can do that once the business is up and running and maybe new products and services you want to launch. But even then, you want to have ruthless ICP execution. And we're finding, because we do a lot of research as well, we're backed up by GTM partners, so we get a lot of their research. And we're finding the customers that focus on ICP are winning more sales. And how are you positioning yourself in the market? What do customers think about you when they think about your product and service, about the problems you solve? I've come across a lot of businesses, and I have to say that sometimes I'm quite confused about the problem they're solving and the value they're providing. Are you using the right metrics? A lot of businesses aren't even looking at things like NRR. Somebody mentioned customer acquisition cost. Yeah, that's good that you're measuring that. And doing some of these things will bring that cost down. So there's some of are our sales, marketing, customer success aligned? I see sales and marketing not aligned sometimes. The marketing is going after one type of customer and the sales is going after another. And sometimes because of the compensation plan, a sales team is just trying to do whatever they can to get a deal in. And what's happening later, that deal's then falling through, customers aren't renewing, it's hard to upsell and cross-sell them. When you create a GTM strategy, not only are you bringing the right customer in, selling to them in the right way, not only is your conversion rate going higher, but they're more likely to renew and you're more likely to upsell and cross sell to them because the whole customer is right in the first place. And who is ultimately owning the sales in GTM? That has to be the CEO and founder, the ultimate owner. They cannot be disengaged from that. So in summary here, right? you need a detailed sales and GTM plan to make sure your ship's running in the right direction. And this works for startups, but all the way to scale ups. You need systems to back up that plan, right? If you might have a strategy, but have you actually got playbooks? Have you got a properly defined sales process, step by step, what happens along the way? Because that's going to create the efficiency. And again, you need to support those teams with things like training and even yourself be trained to get sales conversions as high as possible. And then we also talk about, and we do a lot of this, is putting the right people in the right roles. I'm very much of encouraging people using things like psychometric tests when hiring, things like DISC. We use DISC because you want to make sure the right people are doing the right roles and there's a right cultural fit. And again, when you're hiring, align it to the type of metrics you're trying to go for. So if it's an aggressive expansion stage, get in aggressive hunters. That's an example. And when companies do this, we see they've increased growth, efficient growth. It's not just about growth at all costs. It's about having a scalable business that if the founder had to disappear, that business will still grow. It's not just reliant on word of mouth and founder led or a few heroes in the business. And when you do that, not only does that mean the founder or a few players don't have to be so involved in the business, it means it scales. It means it's sustainable. And even like, a lot of companies are looking for funding. As you know, investors will be looking at things like that. They don't like businesses that are too reliant on a couple of individuals. So just going to finish off with a couple of examples of what we did with a couple of companies and just shows how this works. So we work with a consultancy in risk management in the insurance and banking space. And what their problem was that they didn't have really a system or a playbook. So they were a decent sized company. They were making over 20 million, but they didn't really have surprisingly a sales playbook process. They had won business through very good products and services, a good reputation in the market, and originally through a lot of networking and through their network, sorry. And then they had built some kind of system, but it was not formally robust. They didn't really have a lot of their people were selling were not actually trained salespeople. They were consultants who were trying to sell. So of course they weren't getting a lot of conversion was going through the window. And what we did is we provided them with we created a sales strategy and playbook for them. We trained those consultants in actually how to sell. And we even provide individual deal coaching. And in 1 quarter, their conversion rate went from 12% to 27%. They had a 20x direct ROI in what they invested in us. And even after we followed it a few months later, their deal cycles had gone from 3 months to 6 weeks and the average order value had gone by 15%. They slightly went off on the conversion rate once we had gone, but still it was so much higher. And the average order value had increased by 15%. So what does that mean? They were converting more, they were doing it in less time, and they were making more per deal. Business started booming because they had a sales strategy, because they had a GTM strategy, and the training involved with it as well. And one more, this was a smaller AI tech business, turning over about 3 million. They actually had quite a lot of things. They didn't have a playbook and process. They didn't really have a defined ICP. They were going for everyone. They thought they did, but they didn't, right? They were trying too many things, too many motions in terms of going to market. And there was really like leadership wasn't fully aligned. So what we did is we helped them with their ICP and their messaging, which created, because they had to get consistent leads in. Rather than having lumpy revenue, we created a playbook so they were getting more consistent month by month, and we aligned all their departments. And what happened is their reps on average went from 22% hitting quota to 50%. This was over 2 quarters that we worked with them. And this was important. They were going for 5 different areas to bring in leads and bring in business. We actually looked at this and we found out the areas that were the best for them by looking at metrics, and we narrowed it down to 3. So rather than spending all this money and energy on going for 5 different areas, we went to 3, and we actually went from a total addressable market, total relevant market. Their relevant leads increased by 39%. So, and their marketing spend reduced by 10%. So they actually spent less and got more leads. So the reason I show that is this is what happens when you get all this right. And I cannot stress the importance of getting this right, the strategy, the systems, and the training for any size of business, but especially if you're trying to scale up. So thank you for that. I'll give you some time for questions now. If you want to reach out to me, here's my email address. If you ever want to chat, have a call about this, drop me a line, or do follow me on LinkedIn. And one other thing I've just got as well for you guys, if you want to try this out, if you scan that, it's a free assessment. and it takes about 10 minutes to do. And it just gives you what stage of business your business is at right now and what you need to focus on. It's completely free. It takes about 10 minutes. Just really, really very, very useful tool to have. So scan that if you want to. And yeah, reach out to me as well if you have any questions after this. But what I'll do now is please unmute. I kind of went a little bit over time, but is there any questions about any of that or anything that I didn't cover that you wanted to have covered?
Uh, Navin, thanks for that. I'm sorry for people who can't see me. I don't know what's going on with my laptop. Is it okay to share that QR code on our WhatsApp group?
Yes, sure. I could do that.
Yeah,
I
okay,
could do
because
that.
I can share that in a minute after the call anyway. So,
I'll share those details in the WhatsApp group. Yeah, that's
yeah.
fine.
Okay. Has anyone got any questions for Navin?
Stuart, I can see.
QR code is expired. You might want to know that.
Oh, I just looked at it this morning and it didn't. Okay, that's probably there might be a
Sorry,
technical error there.
maybe it's a problem on my end, but it's
Yeah,
fine.
I'll check that again and send it through, but it shouldn't
Right.
have done because I did check it before here. Any
Um,
other questions?
well, I had a really good question, which I think we all do, the addressable market. And we look at the addressable market because we want to win it all, and we really don't look into segmenting and really going after that target. So even you just speaking about that opened up my mind because I'm just about to start a taxi app, and you sit there and go, I want everyone on board. Everyone, we're going to go after everyone. And you sit there and go, actually, you don't really need all of them. Let's target 10% and then go after that 10% who actually probably really would want it and really want to pay. So that's what I learned from that anyway.
100%. And I can't really stress just how I know I sort of drummed it a bit in that presentation. I can't go over how important that is and being able to really accurately define it. I mean, that's what we help with, but even on your own, I that will increase conversions later on. That will save time. That will do so many other things getting that right.
Yep, cheers.
Any other questions?
Nick mentioned Nick, did you want to explain what you said? Layer is a good framework.
Yeah, happen to. It's a framework I used with but it's a global company based out of America, which quite simply, is really having a strategy
In a way,
that is so
compared
for
to
landing
So,
net new.
Nick, I'm not sure if it's you, but it seems to be some sort of I don't
if
know if
I'd
someone's
gone there
speaking in the
specifically
background.
because I
It's
needed
I'm in a
that
co-working space,
Oh,
which
okay,
is
right.
but if it's
so land is very much about net new customer acquisition. DevOps is really the implementation and onboarding. Try. There's a lot of businesses. You don't really see the revenue until customers are live. So it's really ensuring that at that speed you can onboard customers to get revenue. Expand is obviously trying to enhance coverage and get maximum reach across the customer account. And retainers reducing that churn, which Nevin was talking about earlier. So keeping customers, nothing worse than losing a customer you spend so much time and effort to win in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's a really great framework for strategy. And I think if you Google it, LAER, you'll find a lot of information on it.
Yeah. Now, there are different strategies out there, and I think if I really had to, I think if there was a couple of real points I would like to really highlight again is one thing is getting your ICP right, and also just getting more out of your existing customers, right? But that's not just about the way you service, it's also the way you sell. It's the way you set up the whole system because, what I told you about the NRR, there's so much low-hanging fruit. I'm actually speaking to a business later today because the CEO says his guys can't upsell and cross-sell. They don't, he goes, they understand the importance, but they don't seem to do it. They're working with some of the largest brands in the world, but those brands are spending piddly squat with them. And I was like, that's a very easy. I mean, if they get that right with right training and the right system, they could be making so much more revenue without having to even attract many more clients. So I think one of the things I'm trying to stress is look at the overall thing. And I think a lot of the time when people will just break down sales and GTM into something very, very simple, which is either like top of funnel and conversion, but it's a lot more to it. Any other questions or
Yeah,
comments?
yeah, Navin, you were talking about the disc profile, right? So I myself have done the disc training and all, but I have always seen that though people know it is valuable, but I have not seen organizations actually adopting it, end to end. So what is your experience? Do people go
Oh,
for it or not?
yeah. Well, I mean, we actually help. Yeah, we've
Correct.
helped adopt it into organizations. It's something we actually provide organizations. I'm a big proponent of it
Yeah.
because I think that, it gives you a very good understanding of who you're hiring. And also you can do things like you can even internally, managers and leaders can look at their teams and actually manage them better.
Right.
So it's 100 years old. It's very much based on neuroscience and psychology. We really like it. Yeah, I mean, some companies are a bit reluctant at first, but then I guess that's where you've got to explain the value.
Yeah, because since I have used it, I have always vouched for it, but I have not seen the people open for it. First of all, it is little costly, but again, with the cost comes the quality as well. So sometimes it
Yeah.
becomes very difficult to sell that approach, that yes, do it. It will build your foundation stronger. But yeah, I have seen reluctance most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, same. I mean, originally when I first initially have introduced them clients, it has been resistant. But then when I've showed them or I've explained the benefits and they've
Yeah,
seen the value in it, then a lot of them are
that's
taken out.
great to know. Okay.
Any other questions? I mean, I've still got time if anybody wants anything else. Hmm.
Uh, It's unusual. I thought sales, people love asking questions around sales. Now, I do think a lot of these talks, when you go through it so well, that people get it in their mindset and they're thinking about sales at the moment instead of asking questions. So, if no one's got any more questions, then that's great. Just like to say thank you very much, Navin. Very well
Thank you, guys.
presented and very well timed and very knowledgeable as well. So,
Yeah.
thank you
Well,
very
look,
much.
guys, I'm quite. I like to help as well. So if you guys drop me a line, drop me a message. If you want to discuss anything, either working with me or even just generally talking about sales, really happy to do that because I know it's so important. And with the way the market is at the moment, it's probably the most important thing to do. And one thing I hope that you got out that presentation I did today is that how important sales and go to market as an overall system is. I find that a lot of businesses do not look at it in that broad sense. They don't look at the whole engine and how the whole engine has to move together from the leadership to the strategy to having the processes that back up that strategy and the playbooks and the systems, and then training people so that they can actually execute the sales best. And if that's something you walk away with, I would encourage all of you to go back, maybe take a piece of paper, take an afternoon and go, right, where are we in our business? Maybe against some of those 8 pillars I spoke about, and just start working on that. And again, reach out if you need any help.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Navin. Everyone have a great rest of the day and we'll catch up soon, yeah?